All right, we're doing a bit of an improv podcast here. Positive reinforcement for all your car needs, car radio, at home radio. I don't know. Maybe you're like playing World of Warcraft and you're grinding some quests, or I don't know. Maybe you're watching a YouTube video while you're listening to something. I don't know. I don't care what the reason is. I'm just recording a bit of a podcast here, and I'll talk through some of the Overwatch League stuff that went down this past week. Basically, what's going on is I'm going on vacation tomorrow. I'm recording this the night of 24th, so just got done with the Midseason Madness yesterday. But I'm going on vacation tomorrow on Monday when this comes out, and so I'm not going to be able to be on Plat Chat. I don't know if there's going to be a Plat Chat this upcoming week because it's just such a mess with the travel and time zone difference and all of that stuff going on right now. Like, I don't know the exact date that the Valorant guys are flying home. And they're obviously in Copenhagen, so the time zone difference is pretty crazy. I did try to get some people together for this Sunday, like today. But basically, like, everyone's just exhausted. Like, everyone's just tired, spending time with their significant others. And they just don't want to talk Overwatch for like the 8th day straight. So people are tired, they worked all week. So I couldn't get people together, which is very understandable. And hopefully they'll get together and, maybe do a podcast or something later this week. But I won't be on it anyway. So I figured I'd just record something quick and just give my thoughts on what went down last week. Even before Plat Chat was a thing, I did, positive reinforcements as a podcast after I got laid off in 2019. Basically started as a result of I felt I had things to say. I had analysis I wanted to share. And, just like opinions to share. So it's just like back to the roots for a one-off kind of episode, I suppose, because I feel like I have a lot of thoughts after the past tournament. And I just wanted to get them out there. And maybe people will find it entertaining for their, for whatever they're up to. So yeah, I mean, the Midseason Madness was essentially like the best Overwatch League tournament ever. That's the big picture message. Like, I was on air and I tried to go through all the seasons in my head, all the tournaments. It's a bit difficult because you can't really compare the Midseason Madness to, stage 2 of 2018. Like, that doesn't really make sense because 2018, the second stage, there were like 3 matches even. It was London Spitfire against Philadelphia Fusion, and then the New York Excelsior reverse sweeping the Philadelphia Fusion. So I guess I just randomly just gave Fusion fans the flashback to the past again. But basically, that was like a sick tournament, if I remember correctly. Obviously, 5 maps between London and Philadelphia, but then New York Excelsior reverse swept Philadelphia Fusion in the actual stage finals as well, which I called, by the way, on the desk. So you can't really compare the Midseason Madness to, stage 2 of that because there was just such a match difference, not the same format at all. I guess you'd have to compare the Midseason Madness to like an actual playoffs. And even if you go back in like playoffs, like there are so many playoffs we've had where like the meta's changed in the middle of it. 2019, we had GOATs obviously, and then it shifted to like Double Shield or something. I can't remember. It was like Orisa, Reaper, there was like Bastion, stuff like that. Striker's Bastion moment on Eikemwalde. But yeah, like all of these playoffs, they have some kind of flaw in them. Season 1, obviously, like huge meta shift as well. We had the like flex support playing Tracer sometimes, which like do people even remember that? That was actually crazy. 2020, the top 4 went to APAC, and I was essentially up at 4 a.m. So maybe that affected how I felt about that tournament. But I was working, 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. It was actually bonkers in the middle of COVID. So I don't feel like I was in the right place mentally to really enjoy the 2020 playoffs either. But if I recall correctly, it was not at all like the same kind of, mood as the Midseason Madness. You had Washington, I think, disappointed a bit. After no, they made a run. Washington made a run in 2020. But anyway, the point is, like, all these playoffs, they have some kind of flaw in them, whereas the Midseason Madness was just epic through and through. I don't think I have like any major complaint at all about the Midseason Madness, and going into it, everyone was raving about obviously the player setup, which was unacceptable at the time, where we had these two desks like face to face against each other, and like obviously it was too close. They moved them apart, and it seemed to be a pretty viable solution, and it actually yielded us a lot of great moments. The players being in the same room, and of course it's a one-off because we don't want this forever, but them interacting with each other, for example, the finals, LA Gladiators against Shock in the upper bracket, just emoting, talking to each other, giving each other the finger, like that was really entertaining, and it was like an element of the broadcast that I wasn't really prepared to enjoy, but it obviously turned out really well, and it was like complimentary, fun content. So that was just like an added element that made the tournament really entertaining to watch. I wish, of course, that the Eastern teams would have been there so we could have had that for all the matches. You know, like maybe Profit and Lastro could have had like a bird one-off or something, you know. Profit was the original bird giver in 2018. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's pictures. So, yeah. I guess the main flaws of the tournament. Do I really want to go into flaws to like straight off the bat? Yeah, okay, let's do it. Why not? Because I have so many good things to talk about. You know, it was the best Overwatch League tournament ever. At the same time, it was like a band-aid solution to go to Hawaii last minute again, because obviously China had huge COVID issues at the start of the year, and that affected, you know, the Chinese team's ability to travel, and so they made this call. It was a tough call, but at the end of the day, I guess it worked out. But, you know, it's hard, right? Because then, like, the day after, you have Valorant doing, like, you know, their Masters finals in an arena in Copenhagen, Denmark, with, like, a live audience. And that's pretty sick, too. And that's, you know, what... you know, a live audience. It's hard to compete with that if you don't have it, right? And, you know, Overwatch League is a very unique league in that regard, in that we have global teams, and you know, the Chinese teams in this scenario are very like integral to the league in that way. And so you can't just be like, yep, sorry guys, your problem, because it's not really like their problem. It's the league's problem in that regard. And so I guess the league is doing everything they can to try to come up with the best scenario possible. And in this scenario, it was Hawaii again, and it worked out this time. But I think we're all rooting for, everyone involved are rooting for, that this is not, you know, the future solution to all of our problems. It's just doing this Hawaii thing again. But all in all, a great tournament. So I'm glad it turned out the way it did, because it was very entertaining. It was very memorable. Certainly a lot of good memories. I'll remember this tournament for a long time. So let's dig into why. I guess that will be. So, I mean, where do you start? Like, let's just start with the finals. I'm just going to start with the finals and then, like, go backwards. I'm glad the Shock got 2 maps at least, because this was about to be another 4-0 finals. But the San Francisco Shock, they clawed their way back on New Queen Street, on Lijiang Tower, forced the Roto. They, in my opinion, should have won the Roto. Like, Shock actually, like, choked in the end. And I'm not just talking about the C9 at the end, but also if you go back and watch on point A, I made like a huge groan in the truck, because Kilo, he like missed his grapple on point A and like fell down. And at the same time as that, something else awkward happened. I can't remember what it was. It was like maybe like there was another mistake involved. Maybe it was Kilo did 2 mistakes, but Kilo failed the grapple, which meant he died and couldn't like have supplementary fire. And also there was another mistake involved. Maybe it was Proper getting picked, something with the backline. I can't exactly remember. But there were 2 mistakes on point A. Then you lose another fight on point B, and then the C9. So in my opinion, like Shock, they choked in the end. They were in a great position to win the Roto, but they didn't. You forced map 7. I'm not exactly sure. I think it was a hybrid coming up next, which could have been Kings Row or Midtown, I suppose. Which are, you know, I don't think Shock is like amazing at either of those. Whereas the Gladiators have proven that they are. So who knows where they've already gone? You know, you got momentum. You won 3 maps in a row if you force map 7. So who knows? You know, hindsight, 2020, whatever. But I'm glad that Shock at least get 2 maps, and Lijiang Tower was just like an amazing ride, with seeing Sam go over to the Torbjorn, countering Padipan, being flexing to the Sombra, which turned out to be a bit of a weak point for the Gladiators. I think Shock was looking for Padipan to swap to Sombra, and then the Torbjorn was a counter pick, and then Padipan was on Sojourn, whatever. It was the same thing on New Queen Street. Like, as soon as Padipan goes Sombra, it's like hard to it's hard to get ahead playing Sombra, and not just play like reactionary, which I guess is, you get what I mean. Sombra, not the greatest of heroes, but at the same time, it's hard to find like a different hero to play in Sombra's stead that's actually like useful. So there's a bit of a dilemma there. Like, do you force the Sombra and try to make it work, or do you stick on another hero that's not really viable against what Shock are playing? So hard to say. Don't really have a solution for you. But it felt like Shock were looking for that Sombra matchup, and when they got it, they capitalized. So good on them. Proper on leading tower. Just absolutely crazy as well. There was a very memorable moment when Proper and Kevster had like a tracer off on like the White Room health pack, and Proper was like 20 HP or something, and he looked for the mini and he got it, but then Kevster continued to chase and Proper blinked over to the mega and then got Kevster again. I would have just loved to see like that animated by someone. It honestly looked like a ballerina kind of dance or something. It was like a dance between Kevster and Proper. It happened, and it just like looked magical. Like two tracers battling each other, blinking around, and Proper wasn't supposed to win it, but he did because of his blink management and because he got those packs, and it was just beautiful to watch. Gets Kevster, goes back into the fight. That was really mesmerizing. So there's definitely like some standout moments in this finals as well. Ans had like an incredible game, like an incredible series. I think that Ans so far this year, I don't want to say it's been disappointing, but like you compare that to like the highlights of someone like Kai, MN3 even on Circuit Real, Kilo, there was one more player, Lip on the Shanghai Dragons. Like, I don't think Ans has really lived up to that upper elite Widowmaker play so far this season, and to see him just like catch fire at the exact right time in the grand final of the Midseason Madness was just absolutely bonkers. Like, really, Gibraltar first, and then also on Dorado. It's such a great story as well. Like, really, I think everyone roots for Ans. He gained a lot of fans in 2020 with his incredible performance throughout the season, but then also, his personal battles, and I'm really happy to just see him like succeed and pop off like that. I think it makes everyone a little bit happier. So good on Ans, popped off at the right moment. Let's talk about Shu for a bit. It's very hard to obviously do analysis on the desk these days. We don't have a telestrator. It's limited time. I'm sure people at this stage, like they know it's hard to like provide incredibly detailed analysis that way. It used to be in like the Blizzard Arena, we had like way different tools, and we also had like this sponsored segment, right, where you had to like telestrate almost like every game break. We had one telestration, it was sponsored by someone. We don't have that anymore. We also don't have the tool that allows you to like draw on replays and stuff like that anymore, because obviously if you're in an arena and you have production like literally the next door, the way you connect all those like video feeds into like a pen tool and then back into the production stream, like it's just way easier to do that if everything's local. But if you have to do that online in a setup in a truck, like that's way harder to pull off. So it's just a technological nightmare, and then you don't have the sponsorship either. So we don't have that telestration tool available. So that obviously limits our ability to do like map overheads, drawing, stuff like that. If I want to do a telestration at some point, like I honestly, have to come home after a long day of broadcasting and like pull up the VOD myself and then record it in OBS, draw like on top of it, and then upload it to Google Drive and then send it. And I mean, that's like, that could be like an hour to 90 minutes of just finding like the right angles and like finding, especially if you're finding like multiple moments to not verify, but make the point that like this happens multiple times, and this is something that I want to make the viewer aware of. Like, just finding like multiple clips for that, it's just incredibly time consuming, and especially considering the commute to the Blizzard campus I have now, which is like probably at least an hour every day to Blizzard campus, and then there's traffic and stuff involved as well. So could be like between 1 to 1:30, 1:45, I'd say. Like the first thing I don't want to do is just like sit down at my computer and just like pull up the VOD and start drawing stuff and then send it and do all that stuff. Like, it's just way too time consuming, and I'd rather just spend time with my fiance and my dog after a long day of working. So it just makes the preparation a lot more complicated as well, going into the game breaks themselves. So that's obviously unfortunate, and it does limit your ability to provide like great analysis with the tools we have available. Obviously, we have like the stat cards, which can confirm a point we're trying to make like objectively with stats, and you can read into those numbers, and we try to provide a perspective or context around those numbers that back up our point, and perhaps send some message of why this is good or why this is bad. This week I really pushed myself as well to try to put together some like highlight compilations, to try to make a point about like minor things in game that happened. So for example, this is where I started talking about Shu like 5 minutes afterwards, where Shu's biotic grenades against Atlanta Reign were just like incredibly impactful. Like, they were just so good, and it was the main reason, in my opinion, why they beat the Atlanta Reign. Obviously, Kevster had like a monster series, especially on Ilios. He didn't die on Ilios, and winning that Tracer matchup really helped the LA Gliders set the tempo, and shut down all possible dives and flanks and stuff like that. But the secondary thing that I pointed out on the broadcast was that the LA Gladiators felt like they were purposely trying to target Hawk on the Doomfist, because Doomfist is a very exposed target considering you don't have a shield, but they were targeting him with biotic grenades themselves, sleep darts and stuff like that, and it really like set the Atlanta Reign on the back foot, where Atlanta Reign, whenever they did try to like nano Hawk and dive in, either Venom is getting shut down in the Tracer duel and he can't gain ground and he can't dive in from like an angle because Kevster's there, or Hawk is getting bionated, Hawk is getting slept, and so the front line is deteriorated, and so they always have to like they always get like staggered, or they have to wait off for like 5 seconds for that effect to like deteriorate or disappear. And so the LA Gladiators, they were just like they had the tempo like the entire time, and they were always in control of that series. I feel like on King's Row, obviously that dynamics changed, and I pointed this out as well, because Hawk was playing the Sigma. You can absorb the biotic grenades, you can shield them off, and there were even a couple of moments where like Hawk did like purposely absorb the biotic grenades, and like understanding that was a thing. Like, even when I was a pro, you had to keep like biotic grenades in mind, that cooldown was like a thing you had to take care of. So I don't think it's a thing where just like Hawk just like, I don't know what Anana does. It's like no way. It's just like Shu is incredibly good at it, and LA Gladiators had like tactfully strategized to shut Hawk down, and they targeted him a lot, and it was very noticeable in my opinion. So props to Shu for that. Obviously a great tournament overall, so that was very nice to watch. And then Costa made the point as well that Shock, they do play a lot of D.Va, which D.Va is another character that can eat butter grenades with the defense matrix, stuff like that, and that gave them a bit of an edge earlier on in the tournament. So it was like an incredibly strategically fun tournament because of that, because you have these teams like executing different styles. Like Shock brought the D.Va into the mix, for example, playing Kilo on the Ashe. I just thought that seeing them do that and be successful with it, but then you also have LA Gladiators, who almost like looked best at times when Funny Astro was in the lineup with Lucio. That was so much fun to watch. And then you have Spark popping off with Shy, just funneling resources into Shy and him popping off. Like, there were so many like smaller aspects to the compositional variance and game planning that just made every matchup like a little bit more interesting. So that definitely helped. But then also all the matches like were essentially close. There were so many 3-2s, so many 3-1s as we got down to it, like the last few days, that it was just really entertaining to follow all that action and follow all those small little details. So yeah, I'll talk a bit more about awards later. I'll go down the bracket again. Props to the Atlanta Reign for making top 3 again. It's, even without Hunter, they are still like really this good. I think a lot of people last year, they're just like default to like, oh, Atlanta Reign, they were so good last year because Hunter was part of the team and he was the core of that team and his strategic brilliance and like he helped out and like obviously like the players like respect him a ton. They made sure to like make everyone aware that like they have a lot of respect for Hunter and his work. But I still think it's impressive that the Atlanta Reign, they continue this year to be so good in tournaments without him. And I think that speaks to a broader point about like, the management, Brad, for example, and Danny, who's on that roster as well, assistant coach. And the entire like player core and the vibe and the environment they have going there. I don't think you can credit one single person. I think you have to give Atlanta Reign a lot of respect as a whole for continuing to be so consistently good in tournaments. And I think sometimes we just kind of like take it for granted. Atlanta Reign is a really good team when it comes to tournaments. And they just continue to make these lower bracket runs. So that was impressive. Venom had a bit of a breakout tournament. I enjoyed seeing that. Venom obviously got a lot of hype going into the tournament. I think Brad said in an interview something that he had Tracer, and I think he said he had the Sombra at the time. Like he could play the Sombra at a good level, or he was like working on the Sombra. I can't recall which one it was. It was like a few months ago, so excuse the missing detail. But the Atlanta Reign anyway, good to see Venom pop off that well. Ultraviolet as well. I think Ultraviolet can even clutch so many times with the biotic grenades, the sleep darts. Really like an impact player in that regard. So the Atlanta Reign, good on them, making top 3. Philadelphia Fusion made a bit of a miracle run, honestly. Getting top 4. I don't think a lot of people predicted a Fusion top 4 going into it. Obviously, they beat Seoul going into the tournament, but then like they lost to the Hangzhou Spark 3-1 in the opening round, and suddenly people are like, "Whoa, are Fusion good? What's going on here?" So I don't think if you're a Fusion fan and you're just like, well, I expected Fusion to make top 4 because, MM3 was good versus Seoul, like, good on you, all right? Run with that narrative, be proud of yourself. But I think, a lot of neutral viewers, I don't think they considered Philadelphia Fusion to be, like, elite going into the tournament. I don't think a lot of people expected them to be great going into the tournament. So in that regard, I do think they positively surprised. Now, one could say that the only team they really beat were Hangzhou Spark. I think they were favored against the Florida Mayhem. I think maybe they were favored against Dallas Fuel. Do I even want to talk about Dallas Fuel later? But I mean, the Philadelphia Fusion, they beat Hangzhou Spark 3-2 on the back of Fixa's Miracle Sleep Dart on New Queen Street, where Shai was nanoed. Bernard's Grab, we don't talk about that. And so, I mean, that was just a crazy series overall, right? And then it ended on Lijiang Tower with Belos Ria's Wrecking Ball. Great minefield to end off the game in overtime. Hangzhou Spark couldn't compete. Overall, I was like really impressed by Belos Ria's Wrecking Ball. Like really. They stuck to it a little bit too much. Like there was one moment where they played it on Gibraltar. I think it was not against Hangzhou. Was it against Florida? Yeah, they like got held on point B playing ball versus Florida. And I was just like, you guys, are you guys good? Like, how are you guys still playing Wrecking Ball on point B Gibraltar? If you're like the best, if you can carry on momentum, like from point A to point B and play Wrecking Ball, and that's fine. But I don't really like the Wrecking Ball as much because I think that Gibraltar is a pretty straight, point B is a very straightforward kind of like point. The offense starts out with high ground and low ground option. You can jump the ship or jump the bridge, and you pretty much just dive to make room for your Widowmaker. Or you peel for your Widowmaker and then go. And then to force enemy positioning, you have a Tracer pressuring the payload, which hopefully draws some attention. And then you can like engage on the back of your Tracer, making room for you on the payload. A Wrecking Ball is kind of just like a supplementary space creator in that regard. I feel like it's hard to play on that point. You can distract. You can engage for a few seconds at a time and maybe make some kind of room that way. But I feel like the Tracer is already such a good character at pressuring payload and trying to be a bit of a nuisance that playing Wrecking Ball only like it doesn't really duplicate that effectiveness. It's there's kind of like some diminishing returns in that regard, like playing Tracer Wrecking Ball. So I was just like, I'd rather you guys just play Winston on point B Gibraltar because it's pretty straightforward. you can dive in towards the ship. You can put your shield down, get pocketed within the shield, and that buys at least a few seconds for your backline and your Widowmaker. If you want to peel, you can put it down a shield for your Widowmaker or your backline. And Winston in that way is just like a way more like, I don't want to say one-dimensional, two-dimensional. And I think for that point, that's just preferable to me. So I would have liked Belosria to play Winston there. But other than that, I think Belosria was like a really good ball. The tech was nice. His grapples were nice. The way he navigated around the map, he was very effective. The minefields were good. You know, I don't have all the ball pairs like on the top of my head, but it looked like a top 5 in the league ball performance. You know, I'd have to put way more time into that to making that an official top 5 list, because otherwise people are just going to lose their minds. But, you know, on the back of my head, it's like, what? You know, Fate playing Wrecking Ball. I think Fearless has a ball. You know, the times I've seen Fearless play ball, it's actually been all right. He obviously put a lot of time and effort into improving his Wrecking Ball last year going into the playoffs, and I think that practice time worked out for Fearless. There were times Fearless has brought out Wrecking Ball this season where I'm like, this is a good ball. Like, this is a good Wrecking Ball. And in many ways, maybe I would have liked to see more of that this stage. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Who knows? Those are just like some thoughts I remember about Fearless Wrecking Ball, the times I've seen it this season. I don't have a stats lab, so I can't check the stats. I don't know what's going on with that. So otherwise, I would have looked into Wrecking Ball stats before saying that. But that's just anecdotal. I judgment. I don't know. Hangzhou Spark, I mean, the most entertaining team in the tournament. That's why I just rooted for them. Like, how stupid is it? How stupid is it that these guys could just nano shy, and he goes in with an overclock, supply him with armor packs and maybe rallies, and just like pave the way for him, and he just pops off and gets like 4Ks. I've never seen anything like that in my entire time in Overwatch since 2016. Like, that was just absolutely ridiculous. He consistently deadlifted almost like effortlessly. Like, he just like got resources, slid in aggressively 1 versus 4 and just like racked up the frags. It was hilarious to watch. So that just made me feel good. That was very fun to watch, and and that's why I kind of rooted for the Spark. This tournament, I just wanted to see more of that. I just couldn't get enough of that, dude. If you just made like a 10-12 hour compilation of just Shy getting nano boosted and sliding in, I'd watch that in a single sitting. It was just so stupid. It was just so stupid. So yeah, I really enjoyed Shy in that regard, and Alpha as well. Alpha had a bit of a breakout tournament too. Obviously, we knew that Alfie was great before, but like the way he took it to some of the best tracers around the league, I think a lot of people, you know, might get upset that I'm saying that so many people have breakout tournaments, but I'm also like, you know, shining the spotlight on those guys. You know, it's like one player per team, maybe. Most of them are rookies. So I just wanted to highlight their performance, that I was impressed by some of these newer players in the league, and give them some credit. Another one was Checkmate from the Florida Mayhem. I think he had a good tournament as well. Playing Tracer, got a lot of value, had good pulse bombs, which is something that is obviously very rewarding. Florida Mayhem, after all, they lose 3-2 to the Philadelphia Fusion. But, you know, should be very happy with that performance. I think Florida Mayhem, you know, we joked about it at broadcast that they're Florida Midhem because they didn't beat anyone good and they didn't lose to anyone bad. But, you know, it was really a performance to build on, so I'm looking forward to see more of the Florida Mayhem. I'm going to pull up, actually, real quick to see who Florida Mayhem is playing. Because I really do think that they could take it to, like, some mid-teams. Now, obviously, we don't know what the meta is going to be. I read some Reddit comment today that apparently the meta is, like, double main supporting contenders, which sounds wild. Like Lucio Bap, but I guess you just brawl with Junker Queen. Which, by the way, very expected. And it was the first thing I said on Plat Chat. When Junker Queen abilities were like announced and we played it a bit, just like this commanding shout, whatever thing is stupid. But they're playing Lone Spitfire, Washington Justice, San Francisco Shock, Dallas Fuel, Paris Eternal, Nuke Excelsior. So beat New York, beat Paris, could beat Washington, could beat London. Yeah, I mean, you're looking at like a 3-3. Best case scenario, like a 4-2 stage. For the Florida Mayhem, I say best case. Best case is like 5-1. You beat Dallas Fuel too, but I don't think that's gonna happen. And that's good improvement for Florida Mame. So liking what I'm seeing from that team. It feels like they're consistently improving. They have a good foundation. So yeah, keep it up. Florida Mame. What else do we have here? Don't really want to talk about a few of these teams. Dallas Fuel was obviously disappointing. The fact that they lost to the Shanghai 3-0 and then got 3-1 by the Philadelphia Fusion just didn't seem like their tournament from start to finish, really. Which, not great for me because I was one who was like, yeah, they'll continue to be good this season. But, yeah, not great. Doesn't really seem like they've figured out their damage rotation, between Gurio, Edison, Sparkle. Don't think we've seen a lot of Doha this year either. I think we've seen Doha like very sparsely. I think Over.gg had some issues with player tracking on certain maps, so I it's not 100% quotable, but yeah, he didn't even play this stage, it says. So who knows? But yeah, that's disappointing because if Dallas Fuel had been like elite this tournament too, not even like top 3, top 4, but just like had they been like a really good opponent, that would have just like helped the tournament even more. Because the 2021 storyline, and we know how lethal they can be. I just wish they would have lived up to the reputation a bit. It would have just made the tournament even better. But that would have prevented the Philadelphia Fusion run. So who knows? Whatever. So yeah, I think I went over most of the teams. Seoul Dynasty, obviously very disappointing as well. Got 3-0 behind Charles Park. And then lost to Atlanta Reign. 3-2 as well. Huge clutch by Atlanta. Yeah, that was a bit disappointing. I guess there is a point to make as well. I made it many times that like tank flexibility is like so important in the Overwatch League these days. It's so evident that teams who struggle to play a tank that can play both off tanks and main tanks, it's really hurting their team. Like if you can't win a Doomfist matchup and your tank can't go like Zarya as a response to opt out of the mirror, like it really hurts your chances. We saw the Houston Outlaws. They beat, which map did they win? They won Midtown versus someone. I can't remember who it was. Houston Outlaws. I think they went. Piggy went Zarya, I think, on a Midtown or something like that, and it was just like so much better. It was like a saving grace. Oh yeah, it was versus the Gladiators. Houston Outlaws. They went. They played Midtown versus Gladiators. Almost got full held. And then I think like Piggy went Zarya or something against Reiner's Doom. And it was just like an injection of energy into the entirety of Houston Outlaws. And it just helped them in that matchup so much. And I'm not saying that, because I think all teams should go Zarya versus Doom. But in this case, like it really helped Houston Outlaws in the tank flexibility part, but to, make the matchup more comfortable for them. Obviously, people have really been making a point this year, and I agree that it doesn't all just boil down to compositions. It's also about biotic grenade usage and smaller details, stuff like that we rarely touch on for reasons I talked about before. But I think compositions is like the most basic fundamental way to analyze teams sometime, and also with that there's like an inherent playstyle with certain compositions. So like if you play Wrecking Ball, for example, that's like an inherent different playstyle from playing like Reinhardt. And so, if you're making like big picture analysis, I feel like it's way faster and easier to convey, especially during a very short game break segment. So, but yeah, in this case as well, I think, the Zarya can really help, for example, in the Doomfist matchup. And so tanks who are not really able to do that, I think we saw Shanghai Dragons and Fate, for example, not being able to do those swaps reliably really hurt them as well. I think Belosria was another one. Bernard, I think, as well. These are just like tanks I'm listing off that started playing something they weren't necessarily comfortable playing because they felt inclined to in the compositional matchup. And so they were just stuck playing like an inferior pick. And they weren't comfortable on it, but they also couldn't switch because they weren't like that good on the hero. So it was weird. Even the Atlanta Reign and the Houston Outlaws, when they played as well, like I think you had Piggy Winston versus Hawk Winston on Dorado. That was just I mean, hilarious to watch. I think Hawk is one of those tanks who actually like pulls it off pretty well. Being able to play so many different heroes, they call him the Jote, the Jack of all tanks, which it's a pretty apt name. But at the same time, I'm watching Piggy and Hawk go head to head against each other with Winston on Dorado, and they're doing their best, but it's also pretty apparent in that moment that I think we still have some ways to go when it comes to tanks improving their flexibility and rounding out their Overwatch 2 skill set compared to Overwatch 1. There was definitely like a lot of individual mistakes in that map itself on Winston. So, it's not necessarily the player's fault either, but there were a couple of moments in this tournament where I was like, it was very evident that the level of play was actually a bit lower than last year. And I think the main reason for that is that the players just don't have access to ranked in the beta, and can't like consistently practice in their off hours. And you can't really enable substitutes as well, bench players to practice their heroes outside of scrims either. So, it's a tough scenario, and I think no one's really talked about it, but I think it's led to a lower level of play. Unless you're, like a star DPS player that just, in the lineup 100% of the time, and you can just like play your hero 100% of the time. Like, yeah, at that point, you're getting the sufficient practice to like stay up to date and even improve. But if you're like a rotational guy and you play like, 1 or 2 maps and you have to practice this hero and be really good at it, like the level of play is not going to be as good as you grinding Overwatch 1 ranked for like 10 hours a day and then, all that stuff. So, at times it was a bit disappointing, I suppose, to see that was the case. But, hopefully with ranked, that'll come along, people will improve, and tanks as a whole will become more flexible and pop off in the Overwatch 2 future. I think we're just going to catch up to that, It will come with time. In a year, it'll be less of a problem. So, and then at the end of the day, who really cares? Okay, some updated award season stuff. Very difficult. Rookie of the Year. It's hard, right? I think a lot of people would argue Reiner because they've won 2 stages. But it's hard, recency bias, yes, I admit, to not say that like proper, should be a Rookie of the Year. And some people, they're gonna, roll their eyes. They're gonna be like, we always talk about proper, but like he's such a talent. Like he's a generational talent. And the Shock would not have been in a final. They would not have won an upper bracket final without proper. He's instrumental to the team. And I have a hard time thinking about any other rookie that has as much impact as he has for him and his team. And they're unbeaten in the regular season. And they made the stage finals this stage, Midseason Madness. And I don't think anyone else is like really up there. So, yeah, I think proper is way more instrumental to the San Francisco Shock than Reiner is to the Gladiators, unfortunately. So, on an individual basis, I have to give it to proper over Reiner in this case, I feel like. And that might change with stage 3 and stuff. So we'll see. Interesting to see how long the Shock can continue to just stay unbeaten in the regular season. Which I guess, also, in the MVP race, it's a little bit harder. People have argued Kevster from the LA Gladiators. I think that's a good shout. Profit obviously fell off a bit here because of the disappointing performance in the Midseason Madness. Definitely hurt his chances. I think you have to give it Kevster by now. But also, Proper is in that debate. I think Proper is like a top 3 MVP candidate. But I do feel like the Gladiators, because of their 2 stage titles and Kevster being the best player on that team, that he definitely should be, leading for now by however much you want. And then, maybe even Chu. Maybe even Chu is in that race too. Who knows? Good stuff. So that's a bit of an update. Coach of the Year, by the way, is Christopher. It's Christopher. He's Coach of the Year so far. I don't even think that's a bit of a debate. Because Lana Spitfire are just making so much out of nothing, really. And you gotta get him props. It's amazing to see, really. So I think that was pretty much everything I wanted to touch on. This video, or audio rather, is gonna come out on Monday the 25th, I'm gonna go on vacation. I'm going to Hawaii, funnily enough. I was supposed to go to Sweden for something, and then because of the travel chaos in Europe, had to cancel that trip, which really sucked. And then we made some plans for something in Hawaii, and then those plans fell through. So I guess now we're just going to Hawaii instead. So, vacation for a few days. That's gonna be good. So yeah, I'm gonna go for a vacation in a few days. We'll see if there's a Plat Chat episode this week, but if there's not, at least you have this little audio clip to munch on and enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys for this the Summer Showdown. That's what it's called. All right, take care everyone. Bye.